Hey guys, welcome to the MC Anime Podcast. We cover anime, geek culture, Japanese aesthetics, and Asian studies. We are a multi-fandom podcast, and you can expect to hear topics in your favorite hobby or fandom activity potentially. You can find MC Anime on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Also, please check out mcanimepodcast.com, our website. Furthermore, stay tuned in for another episode.
Welcome to another episode of MC Anime, NC here, and we have a special guest with us today, Reggie. How are you doing today, Reggie?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
Can't complain. I'm in here talking about nostalgic and getting ready to discuss a good topic today, so I can't complain.
Cool.
So introduce yourself, what you do, and where they can find you on social media.
Alrighty, so like he said, my name is Reggie. What I do, right now, I'm currently a coding apprentice for a nonprofit type company. And basically what they do is they're online. They take youths who are interested in coding, who are interested in getting into IT, whether that's coding, data, or cybersecurity. And they basically teach them how to do those jobs, teach them their professional skills and interviewing. And they basically try to match you up with big companies. And so I've been in the program for almost 6 months. And that's how long you're in the program for. That's just a little bit about what I do. My hobbies are watching TV, anime, playing games, listening to music, and pretty much drawing. But that's a little bit about me. You can find me on social media, Instagram at Big Reggie D. And that's big with 2 G's, Reggie lowercase, no spaces, no underscores.
So with that in mind, we thank you for the introduction, where you get you, and the contact you. And now, further ado, this particular episode of MC Anime is classic cartoons and the decades. So what we'll be covering is the 1960s, 1970s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s of cartoons that we reminiscent of and want to bring forth into this particular episode and discuss how they are. So what do you think of cartoons?
Alrighty. So cartoons are nothing to be slept on. So like whether you're a kid or an adult, it's absolutely okay to love cartoons. Now cartoons in the decades, I will say this. If you think of a certain decade and you think of a cartoon, and you automatically, if a cartoon pops up in your head, like if you think of the early 2000s and you think of SpongeBob, I personally feel like that's just a testament to how influential that cartoon was in its decade. So that's just my overall opinion.
So, cartoons are reminiscent of where they're from and how they're characterized in the audience appeal, the nostalgic effect, people watching it after it already aired, and how even a new generation can actually find it and enjoy the same content as the other generation that originally aired in that decade. I think it's really cool that you can do that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, further ado, the decade that we're going to cover as a little case study, the first part, is the 1960s. So the titles that we're going to explore are the Flintstones, Astro Boy, and possibly Scooby-Doo.
All right, nice. All right, so mind if I go ahead and start on Astro Boy?
Sure.
All right, so I'll be transparent. Like, I haven't watched that much Astro Boy, but I've heard of it, and I've heard that it was basically the first anime to really ever be broadcasted. So just the fact that you have all this anime out here, all this current anime, you have shonen, you have, hardcore anime type stuff. But we have to basically look back and we look at Astro Boy. Astro Boy is basically what started it all. So even though I've never really watched the series in depth like that, like I look to it and I look at it, I respect it.
It's pretty good content and gives us a good visual on what Astro Boy is and what this. So with Astro Boy being the way it is, I personally think that the show given to new audiences in America gives it a new spin on what mainstream anime could be depicted in the Americas. For example, Astro Boy, when it came over to America, it was dramatically changed to fit the source material for the American audiences at the time. Astro Boy had Astro Girl, his girlfriend, and when it aired on NBC, a lot of the different formulations, fight scenes were changed to fit the American audiences. So that, in my opinion, made a cartoon in America instead of the anime that's originally from Japan. That's my little bit tidbit on Astro Boy. The reason why I'm using it as a honorable mention cartoon, simple fact how we define cartoons and how American audiences see animation in general. But other shows after the fact don't present themselves as cartoons in that way. So the 4Kids dub of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is still considered an anime, but with Astro Boy, it has enough demographic and a younger general audience portrayed as cartoons in the era. So just don't be confused with that.
Okay.
So let's go to the Flintstones.
All right. So the Flintstones. So interesting. It's like because the Flintstones, that was like 1960s. I'm far from the 1960s, baby. I was born in the 90s. But it's crazy how I have a little bit of memories with the Flintstones. Like I had this big, huge Flintstones book. I remember I used to eat like the cereal, and it was like It basically, the cereal brand was like marketing the Flintstones. So I even watched a few kids. It's crazy how even though Flintstones was back in the day, I have some memories of watching the Flintstones. Yeah. Overall, it was pretty entertaining series to watch.
True.
Those are my experiences with Flintstones.
Yeah,
it's kind of entertaining. It's a testament of time to how innocent it is.
Yeah, you kind of bring up the Fruity Pebbles. Yeah, everyone remembers the classic branding of Flintstones with like the Flintstone gummies, the Flintstone Fruity Pebble commercials, and how it's still to this day that Fruity Pebbles is such an iconic brand of Kellogg's. But that's just, yeah, I think that the Flintstones that we had were representative of Fruity Pebbles, the Flintstone gummies, and how it's portrayed in all audiences in marketing. Now, merchandise and marketing can definitely sell a show to its full potential after the original airing. But what I like about Flintstones particularly is the reruns. When you watch the reruns on like a program called like MeTV or other type programming, it introduces a new audience, and that's how I got introduced to it. So I watch a bunch of episodes on MeTV and keep watching the original reruns of the show, and how over time that appreciation for the show kind of gave within the simple detailing of the show. And each episode is episodic, so standalone, you can just bounce around the different episodes and find what you like based on continuity and overall appearance of the show. And who can't forget Whoop-de-doop-de-doo, or when they're going off prehistoric, walking for cars and having different animals do different things that in the prehistoric age could have been done in the Flintstones world.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of appeal to inventions that they have in modern times, but translate it to a prehistoric time where it could look like in a fictional universe. So that's Flintstone in a nutshell. Both have good memories of Flintstones. Now Scooby-Doo, that's probably a show I grew up with my entire life. Because of the generation you grew up with, I think Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Is like the pinnacle of what Scooby-Doo was.
True.
Because each episode, you had a different mystery to solve. The mystery incorporated was the game to actually do the mysteries. You had Shaggy, Elma, Daphne, and what's the blonde
Freddie,
Yep.
Freddie, what's the other one name? Velma,
Daphne, Scooby-Doo, and Shaggy.
Mm-hmm.
We don't remember last names here, but we do remember the main majority of the names, how they operate.
Mm-hmm.
They go to like different instances where the boogeyman was out, or a ghost haunting, or a werewolf, or some type of culprit, some mystery to solve. They went to solve it, and as a result of solving it, it's usually a person behind it and a person integrated, related, who can gain the most out of doing it. Usually the people that were involved.
Yeah.
So like if they had, let's say they had a bellhop in a hotel, they are mad at the boss, so they trying to want everyone out of the hotel so they have it for themselves so they can decrease the property value to buy it for a fair share or cheaper than what was originally asked for. That could be an example of someone using a haunting or a legend of sorts to scare people away from the property to actually gain something from it, like a monetary value.
Yeah. So basically what you're saying is the crimes that they saw, they were perpetrated by people that wanted real life relatable things, basically like monetary gain or fulfilling some type of greed. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
There's always a reason behind it, and usually you can track the reason with also how they solve the mystery. So usually the person that did the crime, the mystery incorporated, will actually be able to solve it, put the clues together, and figure out who it is, and just trap them when they're caught in the act. If it wasn't for your best-selling kids, I would have done everything and got away with it. That's the same.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite character?
My favorite. Come on now. Is it really a question?
Shaggy,
of course.
Shaggy?
Well, if we're talking about the hero, the protagonist, the heroes, Shaggy and Scooby, that's not even a question. Now, if we're talking about the villain, well, I will say the 1960s original cartoon. I remember this episode called "Foul Play in Funland," and it was basically about this amusement. That
was the amusement park. I remember that one.
Yeah, and you remember like the cyborg that was running around, basically messing everything. I love. His name was Charlie. I love that. That was my favorite episode. It was just, to me, it was, as a kid watching it for the first time, that was a real creepy episode, but at the same time, it was just fun. It's just, I love that episode. That was like my favorite one out of them.
Oh, yeah. Barbera pitched this idea for the show. He wanted something different that was less violent, and we have Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? And other re-renditions of the same name, just in different shows.
Yeah. But I could talk a little bit about my experience with Scooby-Doo. So it's kind of hard for me to pinpoint my introduction to Scooby-Doo. It's just been around ever since I've been around. Like, I can't tell you, like, I had the Scooby-Doo blanket. I had a Scooby-Doo stuffed animal. I can tell you how I got into, because again, 60s before my time. So I was introduced to it by my parents, and we've watched a couple of episodes, and one of them happened to be Foul Play in Funland, and that's what got me hooked onto the 1960s series. One thing I do like from my era, the early 2000s, was I love the Scooby-Doo live action movie with Matthew Lillard. I think his name was Freddie Prinze Jr. I think that was his name. Yeah, those kids like that. Those two movies right there is just, I love those movies growing up. And over the time, we've had like different variations of the Scooby-Doo series. I can tell you, I didn't attach on to every single Scooby-Doo series.
And I think, Scooby-Doo, I think
different versions. We had a bunch of different versions of the the animated version of Scooby-Doo. We had What's New Scooby-Doo. Like, I remember that's one. There was like a bunch of different types of Scooby-Doo series. I must say I didn't drift towards every single one of them. I kind of felt that they lost some of them, like some of those series lost their appeal after the OG 60s version of Scooby-Doo. So like I'm very selective over the types of Scooby-Doos that I watch.
Yep.
But I do recognize and realize that basically each version of Scooby-Doo was made for different, like, once again, it's a generational thing. We have our grandparents, we have our parents, there's us, or we have older siblings that came before us. We have younger siblings, and some of us have children. So I'm willing to bet money they're still I've been out of the loop for a while, but I'm pretty sure they're still making more Scooby-Doo stuff.
Oh, so, yeah, they have more Scooby-Doo in rotation right now as we speak. I think with Scooby-Doo, it's such a one-type thing that you can just transfer to another spin-off or sequel that the current audience will understand immediately what they're trying to do. Scooby-Doo is a very simple plot, and when you go into it, it's very easily translatable to other audiences in different versions and variations.
Now, here's a question I have for you. Do you think between its origins and where it's at now, do you feel that they kind of went too unrealistic with Scooby-Doo? Like you mentioned, like the basic villains were, people that were just basically doing relatable things, basically for their own self. But nowadays, Scooby-Doo, you can't really think about Scooby-Doo without thinking of ghosts, zombies, basically supernatural stuff. So do you think that they kind of skied off a little bit from where they were in that sense?
I think at some point they did, but the supernatural with the recent movies and different plot lines is where it's transitioned to. So I think they went off the deep end, but they also went in the deep end in a good storytelling mechanism for Scooby-Doo.
Okay.
So other audiences are able to understand it and not, it doesn't lose the meaning because the original Scooby-Doo Where Are You in the 60s is definitely up there and one of my favorites that I grew up watching over and over again. Higher Room of Scooby-Doo, Light Switch, old stickers that I still have. So, yeah, my memories of Scooby-Doo was in the RV, watching it, and just keep watching it. So, I feel strongly about Scooby-Doo, and with that, I think wraps up the 1960s in a nutshell. To 1970s.
Alrighty.
So, what do you think of Pink Panther?
So, Pink Panther, I am not going to lie, I didn't watch any Pink Panther. I've seen it in passing because I used to watch the Boomerang channel, and they have a bunch of classic cartoons. So I would see that in passing. Now, what I mainly know it for is like if you go into like the grocery store, they will have this type of sugar, and they will have the Pink Panther on it. So I do know it for that. So I can at least say that it was definitely a big impact then, to the point where it could be marketed on other type of merchandise.
Oh yeah.
That's right, really, where it comes to me. Like I really didn't have that too much exposure to Pink Panther.
Oh yeah. I think with Pink Panther, the show, we see, Pink Panther being the Pink Panther he is, but also the crime element. He's, like a French detective going on to solve what Pink Panther does on the regular day. It's animated shorts, so it's typically like 5 to 7 minutes long. But with those animated shorts, you get enough content to create the cartoon element that we see in Pink Panther. It kind of tells the story of who Pink Panther is. It's 1969 to 1978, so it's like mostly 70s. And as a result, we have like different syndication of it. It's one cartoon. You have the Inspector sandwiched by two Pink Panther entries. Do the number of shorts. 2 episodes feature a Pink Panther cartoon by 2 Inspector entries. The 30-minute show then connected to bigger proportions. But I think it kind of gave us a different feel in the 1976. Was revamped into it's all the new Pink Panther laugh and half-hour show. This versus the live action, and the comedian. It really and truly is classic for it turned from a short into a 30-minute overall show, which, most shorts don't convert over to that type of format. So it's kind of synonymous with that. But at the same time, the French element with doing the diamond and the inspectors coming in. A lot of people know Pink Panther for iconic character rather than the show. The show is what started it. So what do you feel about that? People know Pink Panther more for the iconic character than the actual show.
I would say I wouldn't find that hard to believe, because look at me, for example. I really didn't watch this. I do know what Pink Panther looks like, so I would say I wouldn't be surprised at that conclusion.
Okay. So the legacy of what we take from this of Pink Panther, it's not the crime, it's not the inspectors stealing the diamond. It's Pink Panther himself, the figure and the pinkness and the tiger of him.
I feel with that, it's like with certain things, like sometimes you just need a gimmick to really get that show to be memorable. So sometimes it can have a show can have all these different type of things going for it, working for it, but sometimes that just gets overlooked by its gimmick, its symbol. So I feel that's just one of those examples.
Oh yeah, I think that is pretty good synonymous of what you did. So I agree with that statement and how Pink Panther, to the stand of time, is like a brand of itself. Just like how Mickey Mouse became a brand of Disney, I think that, Pink Panther is a brand of Pink Panther, but a more small degree than Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse is the face of the company.
Oh, yeah.
So, really Steamboat was pretty good for Mickey Mouse, but, that's going way back. But another show that we have to bring up, also based on shorts, is Looney Tunes. So Looney Tunes doesn't actually have a spot throughout the decades. It's all over the place. But I think it'd be a good time to include it in the 70s portion, because it goes from the 60s, 70s to 80s. So what are some memorable shows from the Looney Tunes that you like?
I mean, it's just, honestly, I can't really say I have a favorite. It was all pretty interesting. With Looney Tunes, I feel that's oh man, that's the mecca of cartoons right there. And it's just again, it's what we're talking about. It's one of those generational, it's everywhere. It's throughout the timeline. So it's just whenever you talk about Looney Tunes, everybody from every generation is going to be able to remember it. It's just, it's very bare. It's the basics of cartoons. So.
Oh yeah. You have Bugs Bunny, Roadrunner, Coyote, what's his name? Martian Manhunter? No.
Yeah.
We also have Tweety, and we also have the Mighty Mouse and other versions. The Tasmanian Devil being introduced with the Twister character that represents him. So I think it has a really good runtime. It has different shows, and it offers people in the cartoon block. So, it can run for 5-7 minutes, and then you get to another short, and, you can skip whatever short, come back to it, and that being itself is a digital watching experience that any child can relate to.
Yeah, most definitely.
Like, it gives the definition of a classic cartoon, how it looks and how it operates, and the sketch that it does with the comedy aspect. Now, don't get me wrong, Looney Tunes have its moments of being very risque and old culture type cartoon feel with certain controversial topics.
Mm-hmm.
But, with anything given old age, sometimes that is a thing that you just need to be aware of.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. I also like how some of it was like released into more modern type movies.
Yeah.
So hold on, let me just real quick.
Like Space Jam.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna think of. Space Jam. That was like it implemented that into it. So it's never like, I don't know where I'm going with this, but it's basically like it just goes to show you how much of an impact it was. Like even though Space Jam was in the 90s and this has been running for like 2 decades up to that point. So it was a big deal then, and it's still a big deal now. Like,
oh yeah, I think with how Looney Tunes comes to be, all the different catalog of characters they can pull from and tell different stories, and the different crossing of those characters really does sell the point of what Looney Tunes represents.
Yeah, most definitely.
I probably watched a lot more Looney Tunes than other cartoons, but that's also because so many over the course of time you watch so many of those cartoons.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
So, I think that kind of covers like what the 70s kind of represents in some of the cartoons. Now we go to the 80s. We have shows like Teenage Mutant Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and Thundercats. So what do you think of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Okay, the good old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
The OG version.
OG version. It's funny you just said that because I was just going to go ahead and expose myself. Like, okay, like I'm aware of the cartoon version, but the one that I really drifted to was the one that was released on Nickelodeon/Nicktoons. So basically where I'm going to go with this is that, once again, one of those shows where everybody from like a whole family from generations can watch and enjoy it. Like I personally, I rocked with the ones from the Nickelodeon Nicktoons, but I know the cartoon ones is where its roots are at. Yeah. I also enjoyed their new movie, so I like that. Haven't watched the classic 1992 version yet, but those are the two that I rocked with. I own some some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles like merchandise. So it's just like, even though I haven't watched the OG version, again, part of the fandom, like again, so it's just like it's one of those brands where, it has a variation for everybody,
Mm-hmm. True, you can't go wrong with Leonardo, Michelangelo, Donatello, and Raphael. You can't go wrong with them.
And forget about Master Splinter and
yes,
Shredder.
Classic Shredder and Master Splinter. So which turtle is like your pinnacle of, this is me, this is Reggie, but it's also a turtle?
God. Oh, man. God, you see...
Are you the smart one? You're the one that likes eating? You're the one that just fights all the time? You're the one that comes up the the team?
I mean, to be honest, I feel like this is going to be a very cliche type of answer, but I feel a piece of me in all of them. Like, of course, I am like the smart one, but I also like to chill and eat pizza like Michelangelo. There are times when I have to be like the leader, and there are times where when I'm angry, I'm like, Jesus Christ, I haven't watched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in a while. I'm like the one with the red tie around them. Like, yeah. So I honestly feel like it just depends on what day you catch me on. Like, I feel like I want to chill, eat pizza. I'm like Michelangelo. Like, sometimes because of work or other type of things, I may have to show rare leader qualities. And I'm always doing something that other people always say, oh, he's smart for that. So, but yeah.
Okay, I can feel that on that one. You were like, well, it seems I'm one. Let's say all four and give it like the safe answer and like a vague expression of why I'm like all four of them.
Okay.
He doesn't know what to say. I think with Teenage Mutant Turtles that does really well, you have, mutant turtles who are trained to be ninjas, grew up in the sewers. As a result, get trained by the Master Splints, and they fight the game that's connected to the Shredder, and trying to just basically bring down his corporation or underground network, in a way. So we're trying to bring him down, save the streets of New York, but also not trying to be seen going to the manhole covers when the police show up and the news reporters get involved.
Yeah.
So what do you think of the sewers being a cover of the Turtles and being a hiding place?
That's a good one. Honestly, I personally feel that you really cannot go wrong with that, to be honest. Because, like, the series that I watched, they mostly was doing their action in the nighttime. And so it was open city. They seemed to have a good understanding of where all like the potholes were at. So it's just like you really can't go wrong. Like you got the cops, you track the cops' attention. Like, okay, like you're gonna follow me. Like, watch me turn a corner. Oh, I see a pothole. I'm just gonna jump down into it because I know I know my way around the sewer system. It's only a matter of time before I get back to my lair. So honestly, it's just like if I was a turtle. If I was a freaking mutant ninja turtle and, I didn't want to be seen doing stuff because, I didn't want to get the police, the government, news reports involved. I mean, I wouldn't be able to pick a better spot. It would just be a matter of if I know my way around the city to where I can memorize all the potholes and do I know the sewer system like that to where I could get back to my lair.
True. So master of the sewers. I didn't actually think of it an actual sentence. If I master the sewers, and my stealthy techniques to hide away from any danger away from me, I can be the best I can be at what I can do.
Most definitely. Definitely. And you also, again, put into like, do your work at nighttime. So it's like, don't do it in broad daylight. Oh, God.
Oh, yeah. People see you going in the back alley and say, why are they going back there? At least at nighttime, they can't. If you go back there and they try to see you, they're gone. So you got the cover of night. It's like, I'm Batman. I can only operate at nighttime kind of scenario. But I think the character I identify with the most is probably Master Splints. Because he's like that more thought out, more drawn out character who's the mentor to all the turtles, but also trying to train them to be a better team. And I feel like I can give that to people better than you being all the turtles all combined in one giant turtle. So
I mean, I put that in like a practical because like we all have times where we're angry. We all have times where we kind of have to get out of our shell and be leaders. We all have times where we just want to kick back, chill, and have a good times. And there are times where we're just on our stuff and like other people call us geeks and nerds. I mean, it's just like my look at it is like a real life just interpretation,
True.
So
what life gives you lemons, you make lemonade, and then those labels are just now transported to another realm of the turtles' personalities in the 4 different turtles.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Okay, I can understand that. So, we talked about Teenage Mutant Turtles, Ninja Turtles, how they came to be and how, the overall aesthetic of how they are, let's discuss Thundercats for the 80s century.
Okay. For this one, I'm going to be completely honest. I did not watch Thundercats at all. So, maybe you can educate me on this series.
Okay, so the Thundercats is similar. Okay, so you have a sword. You see the eye beyond sight. And there's not many left, but the main character is a prince of sorts. And he has to protect Thundera. And as a result of protecting Thundera, he's also with other characters who support him in that. The one that, makes the machines work. The twins who are basically boring Doro. And we also have the main cheetah who's super fast. And the other, Thundercat, I think it's the muscle, is Blue, is the muscle of the team. And then the inventor is the one that uses technology to his benefit to outwit the opponents in the Thunder tank and other sorts of gadgets and machinery that the team can utilize to protect Thundera and different aspects outside of Thundera and Thundera's interest as well.
Okay.
So it kind of, they're all cats. They're all different species of cat. So the sword beyond sight goes into a bigger sword transformation, and it gives them power of mystical or the whimsical power that belongs in the sword when you say the sacred chant.
Okay.
And its appeal is that they, to episode to episode, they're it's episodic, so if you miss an episode, you might be out of touch with it, so it's a really good nostalgic feeling of that.
Okay.
So you just have to be prepared if you miss the episode, you go lost a little bit. Because it does piggyback on each episode being continuous in the storytelling. But it's not standalone.
Okay.
So what's your questions about Thundercats?
So, it sounds like your typical 1980s real serious type action cartoon.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like to me. Sounds interesting.
True. So that's what Thundercats represents. I think I have Reggie intrigued, but I'm not quite sure. Are you intrigued?
I'm a little bit intrigued. Honestly, upon all the other things I listed myself to watch, I probably would throw that in the list somewhere.
It's wow, I'll watch it. I just don't know where I'll watch it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a fair answer. You can't go wrong with that. It's better than the safe answer being all 4 turtles.
Oh, wow. You're going to be stuck on that for the rest of the podcast, aren't you?
I don't know. That was, you say it was cliche, and you say, oh, I'm all 4 turtles. Oh, okay, cool. So... But that kind of covers what the 80s kind of gave us as a perspective. Let's go to the 90s. We have shows like Batman the Animated Series. What do you think of Batman the Animated Series?
Batman Animated Series, to me, it was a pretty darn good series. There's not much I can say on it. I think it was just, oh boy, see, we've seen a lot of animated DC stuff over the years. And it's just I feel Batman, the animated series, the first Superman, animated series they had around that time frame, they were just all really good animated series.
Yeah.
There's just not much I can say. It was a pretty darn good series. It was classic. It was a classic.
True. Can't go wrong with it. I really like Batman animated series. It's a very nostalgic, classic, representative variation of who Batman was and how it kind of just threw yourself into what the Batman life was like. And people to this day still say it's a classic, regardless of what other people say. So it fits that category, not only being popular, but the new people getting access to it. it's just a lot of people have grand memories of the sequences of fighting in it, the mature element, and like the classic Batman aesthetic of who Batman was.
I also feel like that Batman in that era, he was basically a presentation of what Batman represented before the Dark Knight era, the Chris Nolan era. They kind of made everything all a bit darker than what it should, what most would agree with it should have been.
Yeah, Batman Beyond was like mature content, but it wasn't as dark as the Dark Knight was portrayed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Batman was a rough around the edge character, but he wasn't this.
Yeah, most definitely.
Goblin in the Night type mission. I mean, Batman's a vigilante. Don't get me wrong, but he wasn't this vigilante. Literally doing the persona of the bat to the point where it's like a vampire bat. Like, you have a person dressing up as a bat in the night with Batman Beyond. Not Beyond, that's totally different. Batman the Animated Series, Batman Beyond comes after that. So I really think it does a really good storytelling story as well.
Mm-hmm.
It gave us a version of Batman that was relatable, that people could understand, but also drive away from other type of kid-friendly cartoons.
Yeah, true that.
So, The Simpsons. What do you think of The Simpsons from the 90s?
Oh, God. Oh, boy. The Simpsons. Oh, Jesus. Jesus Christ, bro. Everywhere I go, I see The Simpsons. So it's just like, there's nothing I can really say about how widespread that series was. It's just like, Jesus Christ, everywhere I go, like, I see Simpsons, man. It was like a 90s series, so it's just like, God, it's what Pokemon, Jesus Christ, let me put this in a way that I can phrase it, but it's to cartoons what Pokemon was to anime. Like, God, you cannot talk about, even though really, I'm not going to go there. I was going to say because of its adult content, like it's still cartoons. But like, yeah, you can't really talk about I really say you can't talk about comedy and cart without mentioning The Simpsons. Like, it's just, God, I don't even know what the frick I can say, bro. Like, that shit. Oh, man.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think it's representative of the fact that what The Simpsons was biblical references, all these parodies of other properties portrayed in the episodes, continuity taken to a totally new level, and how we portray the story. It's every episode has a special. There's always a connecting Easter egg to something else. You can't, the characters are just so relatable. The entire family is like all have different issues. It's not like the version of Adult Swim where like you have everyone being just unrelatable because just crude humor. They didn't do that with The Simpsons. The Simpsons had their version of crude humor, but it was like on the surface. It wasn't like as deep as other types of mature cartoons were.
Yeah, I can definitely say Simpsons made its impact. It freaking took over.
Like, I can't really.
I also love how The Simpsons. You say you can't give a synopsis?
No, I can't give a synopsis of what The Simpsons is about. Just Simpsons is all over the place.
Yeah.
I guess it's just about the family and the Simpsons being who they are. I don't know. Yeah. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say I like, this is kind of a bit off the topic, but I liked how you had like cameos of like, they basically like kind of mock like some of the real life like actresses and politicians and bring them into The Simpsons. And they even said there were some instances where Simpsons kind of predicted the future for real life. So it's just, it's
yeah. Oh gosh, it just got to me. How many times did the Simpsons predict this happening at this specific time on this day? You know, it gets like that deep conspiracy theory. And actually, some of them are proven true. And then others are just like, well, did the Simpsons predict this was going to happen kind of perspective? So just back in your mind, that type of philosophy thinking. I don't know. Simpsons is like one of those animated series that just totally throws a wrench what cartoon is. Personally, in my definition of animation, cartoon, animated and anime are like three. My classification, I put The Simpsons in the animated series category. But most of these I put in that category, so I'm just don't mind.
I got you.
I mean, it's just a good show overall. You enjoy the content, and each episode feels fresh. There's not really a dull moment in each episode, or whatever episode you've seen has something to offer to that person watching it.
Yeah.
I don't have a complaint about The Simpsons.
Yeah, me neither. It did its thing.
Did really good with that particular franchise. I can't complain. So now we cover the 90s. Let's go to the 2000s. So we have Star Wars: The Clone Wars and Korra, the Legend of Korra.
Alrighty.
So let's cover Star Wars: The Clone Wars. So what did the Star Wars: The Clone Wars do for you for that particular cartoon?
All right, so let's take it back to 2008, 2009. A boy was at the peak of Star Wars fandom. Couldn't nobody mess with me as a Star Wars fan back then. And a lot of what I didn't know at that time was that a lot of people were hating on the Star Wars prequels. You know, obviously Anakin Skywalker and his I Hate Sand. And one of the things that was interesting, I felt, looking at it now, I felt Star Wars: The Clone Wars took the Star Wars prequels and they basically kind of took a chance with them. And they basically took the characters and they expanded on them. So, like, with Star Wars: The Clone Wars, when you think of Anakin Skywalker, you don't, a lot of the cringy things people think about Anakin Skywalker in Episode 2 and Episode 3, they take Anakin Skywalker with Star Wars: The Clone Wars and they make him so much more. Like, by the Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith, Anakin Skywalker at the beginning was like this legendary war hero, Obi-Wan Kenobi. And with Star Wars: The Clone Wars, they expand upon that. So it's just like, they give a depth into the prequel era. They build like a whole universe. Like, you love Obi-Wan Kenobi, you love Anakin Skywalker. Like, you even love the newer characters that we didn't know then. Like, they introduced Ahsoka Tano. Like, they gave depth into how badass the clones were. Like, oh my God, you really, Count Dooku really got on your freaking nerves. Like, he made numerous like appearances throughout the series. You had Jennifer Grievous, Asajj Ventress. Like, to me, it's just Star Wars: The Clone Wars it was a great freaking series, and it was a testament to how long it lasted. Obviously, it couldn't keep going on forever and ever and ever because, of course, it spans between 2 and 3. And the more stuff you introduce, the more reasons why you basically, in order to keep from messing up with continuity, you have to explain, okay, well, what happened to this character? Like, what happened to this character? So basically what I'm trying to say is Star Wars: The Clone Wars, to me, it expanded the prequel side of things and it gave depth into the characters before Episode 3. So you're looking at an Episode 2 and you looked at when you start Episode 3, you watch Episode 3, you look at all the stuff they did in Star Wars: The Clone Wars, and it's like, okay, wow, I can see why these guys have the reputations that they have. We can see why it was a big deal when Anakin finally killed Count Dooku. Like, you can see why Jennifer Grievous was somewhat of a threat, you know. it was a great freaking series. Like at its time, like I felt it took a chance and it blew us away.
Okay. You really, really like Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Like, there's no explanation that can top that. You're just like, okay, cool. I get my opportunity. Let's talk about it. Mike and I watched the series. I actually liked the lore. I watched from time to time. I didn't keep up with it like you did, but I really did enjoy what the animation quality was like in portraying Star Wars. Because Star Wars to me wasn't like a big brand that I was like interested in the franchise, but I did thoroughly enjoy Star Wars: The Clone Wars for what it did for the brand and the franchise itself. And there was a couple of episodes I watched out of order that, even though I didn't know what was going on, the episode itself sold me for like that 20 minutes of airtime on Cartoon Network at the time to understanding enough that there's fighting going on. Okay, here we go. They're going at it. The lightsabers are at. The different missions are being able to accomplish with the show is being shown in the episode. So I encapsulate what Star Wars represents of the Jedi and the drones and different types of pilots of robots, and the different aesthetics give you why people remember the series so much.
Most definitely.
And another one from the 2000s, The Fairly Odd Parents. I was a big watcher of Nickelodeon and The Fairly Odd Parents and how it came to be portrayed in the media. 10-year-old kid, so miserable. Vicky, the babysitter, is tormenting him, and his parents just go about their business and doing whatever random thing at the time they were doing. Whether it's going to the ball, going into space, going to see the movies, they didn't care. They just left Timmy Turner be left alone, and then having Vicky made him so miserable that he had Fairly Odd Parents. They came down to grant any wish he wants, and when he turns a certain age, they go away. But it's just the entire plot of the adventures of Timmy Turner and how he messes up every single wish that he does, and he has to go fix it, and then somehow there's some weird restriction that the fairies can actually intervene, Wanda and Cosmos. And Wanda and Cosmos are actually one of the few married fairies that we see in Fairy Odd Parents.
Yeah, that is true.
So that's also because Cosmo is so dumb that he needs Wanda to support him. But that's beside the statement. The show does bring good audience quality. It's a nice each episode, even though it's not standalone, it does connect episodes. You can watch each individual episode by itself. You just might not have the knowledge from a previous episode of how this person connects into the storyline. So you have to watch it for that purpose, but that's pretty much it. And then you can't go wrong with Quackle. Fairies! And he cracked his back and then trying to catch them. And Quackle actually had fairies himself, so he just forgot about them. But apparently, he still goes crazy when he sees them.
Oh, man. That's bringing about memories. That's interesting you mentioned that the episodes have intercontinuity. I couldn't think back to many times where an episode referenced another episode.
It's not really like another episode. It prevents...
maybe it's just my... I have a hard time.
It does characters. It's usually doing storyline of characters. So it has a small continuity thing that connects them. It's what we call episode. So you're saying Easter basically eggs.
Oh, okay.
So certain things in episode Easter eggs you're not going to understand.
Yeah.
Like, how did this character become this? When last time I saw them, they weren't even like this. Stuff like that.
Okay, I get it.
Yeah, it has like a small continuity, but it's like mostly standalone.
Yeah. My take on Fairly Odd Parents. Yeah, it's definitely, when you say 2000s and Nickelodeon, it's definitely up there with SpongeBob. Unfortunately, and this is just my opinion, I feel
SpongeBob was
around.
oversaturated.
You think so?
Well, that's why I didn't have it on the list.
I was just gonna say this, like similar to SpongeBob, around 2007, 2008. I feel that's when Poof was introduced.
Yeah,
That's kind of where it fell off at. Like,
yeah.
it didn't hit hard with me anymore. But like, say its golden era was like from the 90s all the way to early mid 2000s. I enjoyed the hell out of some Fairly Odd Parents. Like,
I do see your point there. All the episodes. Now we have a dog, Adventures of the Fairly Odd Parents dog, and now he has another share the fairies. It just whatever. But that kind of is like the end of 2000s era. The last one we're going to cover is 2010 era before 2020. 2020 is way too new to bring up, so we're just going to stop at 2010.
I respect it.
Because it's the decades that hasn't passed, or enough of the decade hasn't passed for us to talk about it. Legend of Korra. What do you like about Legend of Korra in 2014?
Okay, first off, I'm going to start by saying something very controversial. I actually enjoyed Legend of Korra more than I did Avatar: The Last Airbender. To me, the plot, I remember when it first came out, like back in the 2010s, like it was a big deal. And the thing about it was every time an episode came on and it ended, it left me wanting to know more. So like Saturday night, a new episode would premiere. And then the plot would happen. And then it's like, okay, what the freak happens next? And it's just like, that was just the pattern of it from season 1 all the way to season 3 seasons. So it was, three seasons. So that was the pattern from season 1 all the way to season 3. And it was just like each villain just in their own way, just, bro, like, oh my God. Like Amon in the first season, he was just like, that dude was like, yo, like, I was like, how the fuck is he doing this? And then it's like, it came out that he was a waterbender. I'm just like, what? And then there was the other, let me see, who may go back my memory. So after that, there was this other waterbender. He was from the Northern Water Tribe. Like, it's crazy. He was obsessed with like merging basically with Dark Spirit, like how all the avatars have like Batu, that's what his name was, Batu. Like all the avatars are merged with Rava, the light spirit, and you have this dark avatar named Batu who's been chained up for like thousands of years. So it's just crazy how you have this crazy ass like waterbender who's like, he's so crazy, he wants to merge with this dark spirit and become this dark anti-avatar. So you have that. And then you have the final one where you have this military, she was a metal bender. You have her, and you basically, no. There was 4 seasons. Excuse me, there were 4 seasons.
You also have the assassins going after Korra and trying to.
Yeah, the dude that can play, I forgot his name. Like, he was at first he didn't have powers, but because of what happened in the second season, harmonic conversions, it was an overload, and basically a lot of people got bending powers, and he was one of them, and he was just a badass. And see, what I love about him was that, because see, the thing I kind of felt at times, like Korra was a bit Nancy Sue-ish, and so what I mean by that is that she kind of just comes in and she doesn't really have to struggle all that much. But what I liked about him and what I liked about Amon was that they humbled her. They actually made her feel fear. They actually let her know that, okay, you're not invincible. And so even when she reached into the avatar state, he was still able to hold his own against her. And it was really Tenzin that was ever seen dominating him. So to me, he's the reason why Tenzin is the master and Korra is the student. So that's what I love about. That's one of the things I loved about him. There was a lot of things I loved about him. He was just a badass.
Yeah.
And then there was the metal bending chick she used to be good, but then she got power hungry, and I think she was trying to build this metal bending empire. And what I loved about that was because of what happened in the previous season with who I just mentioned, she ended up getting poisoned, and she had a lot of self-doubt, and again, she was shooken up. So she wasn't on her game. She wasn't, she was just off her game. And because of that, that's why she lasted, like the villain, Kuvera, I think that was her name was.
Yeah.
Kuvera, she lasted so long. And I can say she was probably the least impactful villain. I'd say she wasn't the best one. She was the least out of all four, but she still did a very good job. Overall, I just love the series. It was a great series.
We have Legend of Korra. We have, the non-benders versus benders, which is the big conflict in Avatar, the previous sequel of Legend of Korra. You have the graphic novel telling in between of the Republic and how the Republic is like the fifth nation and different nations the 4 nations coming together, being the neutral political party entity in the world, and then that transition of non-benders versus benders to the Northern Water Tribe and Southern Water Tribe, the isolation and the conflict that the Fire Nation did at the time, and how industry changing is revolutionary. Then you go to the PTSD of Korra, the previous events of like Haman, and how something of harmonic convergence can hold for the character and not have the bestowing of that. So restoring of the powers, finding who she is kind of cool. And then we get to, life is threatened, but now it's personal. They're against you specifically to stop Avatar being born.
Yeah, for real.
And then we go into the Earth Kingdom. The Earth Kingdom is having all the struggles, even though it had all these colonies and different people of like the foreign colonies there and stuff like that. They're not united, and Tarifa unites them, uses might as a way to do brute force in the government politics. The good thing about Legend of Korra is all of that gathered together, PTSD, sexual identity, personal trauma to overcome, basically having the Avatar cycle stop, and stuff like that, and her basically being the first Avatar all over again. So the previous cycles from the before are gone, and all this other stuff. You see a lot of trauma being the main storyline, and how she overcomes the trauma, and how she as a person probably dealt with a lot more than just Aang that when we saw in that Avatar class epic. Aang was a 100-year war, but much younger than Korra. So the personal growth for Korra is a lot more than Aang. Even though Aang had to immediately overcome pacifism, but Korra had to overcome more personal obstacles in her way.
I feel like that's an interesting one. I definitely feel you on the mental trauma part.
Yeah.
But God, Aang had a lot to go through because first of all, he was frozen, and when he woke up, like everybody in his era was dead, so he really was the last airbender. He was a 12-year-old. He basically had to master all these elements originally before a certain time period, before a firebender came and ruled the world. And he just only had 2 people with him.
But also Korra had more mastery over the elements, so she had more time to practice them when Aang did.
Yeah.
So there's also a good step saying a feat to learn the elements in such a short time and face the Fire Lord. So the conflict, Aang was one overreaching conflict, core is there's many conflicts that led to each other being all combined.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it. Yeah.
So, but Aang is still the last Airbender. Avatar: The Last Airbender is one of my favorite animated series to watch. So,
Oh yeah, definitely.
So that's what I'm biased with about that. But as we take a look throughout the decades, each decade has a different property or cartoon media that portrays different stories, different types of stories, and different audiences in the generation gap. There's like, I think the generation aspect of how we see cartoons is the reason why I made this particular episode, the cartoons and the decades. With like a case study of the 50 years of what cartoons came to be and how the shows in that time frame represent the main demographic of the media compilation that we share while watching the different decades.
Yeah. This kind of brings me into a possible topic you could probably do a podcast about.
Yeah.
I don't know if you probably covered this already, but you could possibly talk about comics throughout the decades and or you could talk about supers throughout the decade.
What, supers throughout the decade?
Huh?
Supers?
Yeah, superhero comic book powers throughout the decades.
Oh yes, okay, yeah, I can definitely see that. As we come to a close to this particular episode, where's your closing thoughts about this, Reggie?
So, yeah, I mean, basically, when you look at it like this, from a decade to decade standpoint, you can see how each cartoon kind of evolves. Like, you could have something as basic as, okay, so you have this template here, and what we're going to do is like Scooby-Doo, where you have the crime, you have the person trying to solve the crime. In retrospective, you kind of know how each episode's going to play out. And I think it's interesting how, as we go through each decade, that template or the way a cartoon is presented evolves over time. And you can go all the way over to something in our era, like Legend of Korra or Star Wars: The Clone Wars, where it's just like, oh my God, how is this going to play out? So I think it's just kind of interesting to look at over the decades of how how a cartoon evolves, you know?
Oh, absolutely. I think, when you take the template, transform that template, change the template, expand on the template, you get a more storytelling, more plot development, character development, but simple approaches back to the simple shorts, to the more kid-friendly, to the more theme, dark side, you can go with it. But as a consumer of this type of media, what I usually see is the different references within the decade, the historical impact, and how that historical impact transcends the original decade it came from, and still grabbing new people to watch it to today's standards. Today's standards is totally different than what it was back then, but yet it still has an active audience wanting to keep consuming that media.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, it's just definitely a testament to how it was in its how good it was in this decade, and how it's still pulling in new fan bases today. So
so as a consumer, we come to you. We talked about how the decades came to be, different shows within those decades, but also, I brief up a timeline of different cartoons in different years, by 10 different years, 5 different years perspective. So, hope you guys enjoy it.
All right.
This is MC Anime over and out. And thank you, Reggie, for being here and being a good guest and exploring the classic cartoons throughout the decades.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
All right, guys. See you later.
This concludes another episode of MC Anime Podcast. MC Anime Podcast is available on podcast directories like Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. We also have our website at mcanimepodcast.com. If you want to directly support us, then follow Patreon blog MC Anime. Finally, if you want services for hire, then we're available on Fiverr for audio and video production, graphic design, idea consulting, and blog and article writing.